Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel. My name's Eddie. I'm a professional voice actor, singer, and all sorts of stuff. But today, that's not really relevant to the point I want to make. I just want to talk about something that bothers me a bit, which is the over-reliance on citation, peer review, and other similar systems that I believe are sort of plaguing our society and especially young people right now. And listen, if you're coming for something entirely scholarly, where I'm using citations to justify the fact that I'm talking about using less citations, you're in the wrong place. We're here to have a conversation and to just talk about things in a frank way. And honestly, the stuff I'm going to talk about today and the problems that, uh, this citation culture causes and this over reliance on citations just in general and peer review and so on, the problems that these things cause, um, they're sort of the reason why, in many ways, I've chosen to sort of take my channel in the direction that it's going in right now with this frank speech style over my videos of my artwork. So let's get into talking about what the good things about citation are. So, like, I think the positives of citation and peer review, as well as sort of an extension of that, they're obvious, right? Like, very clearly having to justify your opinions in scientific disciplines, at least, that's really important. It's a really, really important thing. It, ensures that everything you're doing is at least close to being above board, and at the very least has some justification that you can show people when you need to explain your points, and it makes it easier for other scientific people, other professionals, to understand the points you're trying to make. So great. We understand that now. We know that it can help drive science because it can really ensure that the conclusions people are coming to are backed by something and not just their feelings on whatever subject. Awesome. Now, here's where it becomes a big problem is when you try to apply those same constraints to conversation or just societally as a whole, and when people's tenure depends on those constraints. So we'll go over um, we'll go over the first one first because it's a general societal problem. Then we'll go into tenure one. I haven't really thought about like how to break it down fully yet, but I'll do my best in the moment talking about it. So uh, one big problem I've noticed. I mean, I have a younger brother, first of all, just to start this off to give some background, who's much much younger than me, and this sort of came to mind through talking to him and also through a variety of other people I've heard talking about this sort of general problem, and then of course with peer review through some other recent events, which I'll get into afterward. But really, in my conversations with him, what drove me to understand this more than anything else, this over reliance on citations, is that him and I've noticed other young people around his age, so sort of, I guess, Gen Alpha, it would be late Gen Z, early Gen Alpha. I don't know. What would that be, like 2010s? Something like that. Not super familiar with when gens begin and end, but anyway, except for in Pokemon, I guess. But anyway, I just noticed that it's hard to get any opinion out of him. It's hard to get him to sort of come to his own conclusions on anything, in spite of the fact that he is quite advanced, in especially in things like mathematics, like much more advanced than I am. Um, and he excels in school, straight A's, like literally above 4.0 his entire time in high school, and he's just about to finish. Um, and so he performed a little bit better than I did academically, not entirely differently, but definitely took harder classes than me. um so smart kid, clearly, right? Smart kid, he should have a lot of opinions on all sorts of things, right? Because with all this information that he's gained, um he should be comfortable taking that information and coming to his own conclusions to some extent or another, right? But because of, in my opinion at least, because of how much this citation culture has taken over, because of how important it is to justify everything you say with some backing based on something else someone else has said. And by the way, in academics, I've noticed this just in general, where it's like, even with, holding just a philosophical opinion or general philosophy on life like that, or um, you know, a generally known fact in a certain discipline that you might be learning about, um, a citation is almost always required. Like you can't just give your opinion on something, even if it's something that is not necessarily the most objective. Like liberal arts classes requiring you to have citations for your reasoning behind why you think XYZ thing might mean XYZ, in spite of it being, completely subjective. Things like this, right? Like, eh, I've noticed it carrying over. And by the way, I'm in the process of getting my master's degree right now, and I've noticed it in my schooling as well. And I've noticed that as I've gone down the path of more and more education, which I now mostly just do for for self-improvement, but um, I I've noticed more and more that it's just becoming like prevalent to the extent that it stunts the quality of my work because I'm spending more time looking for citations to explain my thoughts instead of just giving my thoughts on something and allowing the professor to come to their own conclusion about whether or not what I'm saying is true or not. Um, anyway, listen, it's like, you know, the true objective, the true sort of objective things in life, they really require you to cite, right? Like you can you can just give your proof of how you solve the mathematical equation, for example, and that's usually good enough. So I find that funny too. But anyway, long story short, the further you push into this sort of culture of needing citations, the less comfortable people become with coming to their own conclusions, which is a big problem. And it also makes them less accountable for that same reason, because um, if you've not come to your own conclusion and you've just derived your conclusion from something someone else said, you can now essentially blame them for making the mistake instead of yourself and leave it at that. Another problem I've noticed is that often people, when they're citing different papers and so on, and the people checking those citations, uh, take a look at them, they simply just aren't actually looking at what's really going on with the papers. They're not taking the time to really get a good understanding of them, and I think it's actually impossible to do that, and extremely burdensome on professors and other people who are required to do things like verify these citations. Probably takes up a massive amount of their working time and prevents them from having the opportunity of actually confirming that the work that the student is presenting is quality, and on top of that, spending the time to actually think about the arguments in the first place that the student may be making, and properly critique them. So that's a big problem. Another point regarding this that is related to professors is that um, to the best of my knowledge, professors are required to get a certain amount of citations on papers and to release a certain amount of papers to hold on to their sort of tenure, or to build tenure, and essentially keep their jobs, right? Now, on the surface, this might sound good. It might sound like, well, this is going to make professors more productive, right? Because they're going to produce as many papers as they possibly can that are interesting, so that people will then go and cite them because interesting things get cited more, right? You would think. But unfortunately, from all the research that I've seen and my understanding of the subject, my limited understanding, of course, and look, I'm even justifying my own opinions now, but listen, my belief on it is, I'll just go ahead and take the responsibility now. My belief on this is that it creates pressure instead for professors to not take risks, because if you take risks and you put out things that could potentially, be disagreed with by large portions of the population in terms of their own personal opinions, or it's completely new and not easily understood by people, you'll find that people actually may cite your work less, right? I mean, just as a matter of, hey, if I disagree with this thing, I'm not going to cite it. People can be so selective with what they use now, especially because there's so many options for citations, and in most cases, unfortunately, people won't actually take a look at the quality of those publications, or the quality of those different sources, and break them down. Lastly, let's get into something a little bit contentious, and that's, of course, the peer review system, where it comes from. Of course, we now know that Robert Maxwell was connected to the creation of the peer review system. We know that, he owned a company that's responsible for a lot of textbooks we use, and we know that people like Epstein have used these systems to their advantage in order to misdirect and guide people in a little bit of a dangerous direction. Again, this is contentious. There's things to point to this being true. I said we know before. We don't really know. I shouldn't say exactly, but we know certain things, like, for example, again, Maxwell being involved in the peer review process creation, and these systems not really being proven out. and somewhat easily taken advantage of. Uh, so, relying on systems that are potentially made by people with not the best intentions, that might want to, use them to manipulate you potentially, or take advantage of you or hurt you, might not be the best idea, or at least not blindly doing so. I think the systems have their uses and they're valid. They're valid in their own ways, but we've got to take them together with our own personal understandings of things. We need to actually have discernment, and we need to take responsibility for our own opinions. Anyway, that's been my opinion for today. I hope you enjoyed watching this drawing of my little sort of goblin gremlin-y creature here. I have a lot of fun sort of iterating on this guy, and I have been for a while, and I'm thinking about maybe, I don't know, putting out merch with him eventually, or maybe a little web series of some kind. So let me know what you guys think. Hope you enjoyed. Again, take care, everybody. This has been Squiddy, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Oh, and let me know what you think in the comments. Subscribe, like, you know what to do. Bye.